Their relationship forced her to confront parts of herself she might never have faced otherwise. Her need for control, her fear of vulnerability, and the cost of loving without restraint. Over the years, Madonna has built an empire, reinvented herself countless times, and remained one of the most influential figures in music and culture. She has experienced fame at levels few can truly understand, navigated personal losses, raised children, and continued to evolve both as an artist and as a person. Through all of it, her perspective on love has deepened. She no longer measures relationships by how long they last, but by how deeply they are felt and what they leave behind. There is something almost poetic in the way she speaks about the past now, not with bitterness, not even with regret, but with a quiet acknowledgement that some connections are simply too powerful to fit into a conventional ending. Her story with Sean Penn was never meant to be a peaceful, lifelong partnership. It was something more volatile, more consuming, a love that arrived like a storm and left behind a permanent mark. And perhaps that is why it continues to resonate with her, not because she wishes to go back, but because it represents a version of herself that lived without hesitation. A time when emotions were raw, decisions were immediate, and love was experienced in its most unfiltered form.
Right.
Of love may not last, but it changes you in ways that nothing else can. Even now, as she continues to embrace new relationships and new experiences, there is a sense that she carries that history with her not as something unfinished, but as something complete in its own way. It had a beginning, a middle filled with passion and conflict, and an ending that, while painful, was inevitable. And within that arc lies its meaning. In the end, Madonna's journey through love is not defined by one person, but it is undeniably shaped by one. Among all the faces, all the names, all the moments that came and went, there remains one connection that stands apart, not because it lasted, but because it mattered in a way that time could never erase. And maybe that is the truth she has come to accept, that some people are not meant to stay forever. They are meant to arrive, to change everything, and to leave behind a feeling that never fully fades. And with that realization, Madonna seems to have made peace with something many people spend a lifetime trying to understand, that love does not need to last forever to be meaningful. Some relationships are not meant to grow old together. They are meant to awaken something, to ignite a part of the soul that would otherwise remain untouched in quieter moments. Away from the stage lights and public attention, it's easy to imagine her reflecting on those years not with the chaos that once surrounded them, but with a kind of stillness that only time can bring. The arguments, the passion, the intensity, all of it now feels distant, almost like scenes from another life. Yet the feeling, the core of what made it real, remains intact. That is what time cannot erase. Her connection with Sean Penn was never simple, never easy, and certainly never calm. But perhaps that is exactly why it left such a lasting imprint. It wasn't built on convenience or comfort, it was built on raw emotion. Onto people who met at a point in their lives when everything was heightened: fame, pressure, ambition, and desire. They didn't just love each other, they collided. And in that collision, something unforgettable was created. As the years pass, the need to define that relationship fades. It no longer needs labels like success or failure. It simply exists as a moment in time that carried extraordinary weight. Madonna has lived long enough and deeply enough to understand that not all love stories are meant to have perfect endings. Some are meant to remain exactly as they were: intense, imperfect, imperfectible. There is also a quiet strength in the way she continues forward. She has never allowed herself to be trapped by nostalgia, even when certain memories still hold emotional power. She keeps creating, keeps evolving, keeps stepping into new chapters without losing the essence of who she is. That balance between remembering and moving on is perhaps one of her greatest achievements, not just as an artist, but as a person. And maybe in the end, that is what gives her story its depth. Not the fame, not the headlines, not even the relationships themselves, but the way she has carried them. Each love, each heartbreak, each lesson has become part of a larger journey. A journey that is still unfolding, still searching, still alive. So when she speaks of Sean Penn now, it is not with longing for a different ending, but with an understanding that what they had was exactly what it was meant to be. Burned brightly, ended painfully, and lived on quietly in memory. Not something to return to, but something to honor. Because some love stories are not meant to be rewritten. They are meant to be remembered. And in that remembrance, Madonna has found something even more lasting than romance perspective. The kind that only comes after years of living, loving, losing, and rebuilding. What once felt like unfinished business now feels like a complete chapter, one that doesn't need to be revisited to be understood. Time has given her the ability to see not just what happened, but why it happened. Looking back, she no longer sees only the intensity of what she shared with Sean Penn. She sees the timing. Two people at the height of their youth, fame crashing into their lives at full speed, emotions amplified by pressure, expectations, and constant public scrutiny. It wasn't just a relationship between two individuals. It was a relationship under a spotlight that never dimmed. And under that kind of heat, even the strongest connections can fracture. There's also a quiet acceptance in understanding that some versions of ourselves only exist in certain moments of life. The Madonna who loved Sean Penn in the 1980s was different from the woman she became, later stronger in some ways, softer in others, more aware of the balance between passion and peace. And perhaps the same is true for him. They didn't just outgrow each other, they evolved beyond the people they once were together. Yet even with that growth, the emotional truth of their bond remains untouched. It wasn't an illusion. It wasn't exaggerated by fame. Was real, deeply real. And that is why it still holds meaning. Not because it could work today, because it once did in the only way it could at that time. Madonna has often said that life is about transformation, about constantly becoming something new. And her journey through love reflects that philosophy. She has never stayed still long enough to be defined by one chapter, one man, or one outcome. Instead, she has allowed each experience to shape her, to push her forward, to refine her understanding of herself and the world around her. Even now, there is no sense of finality in her story. She continues to live boldly, to take emotional risks, to open her heart in ways that many people would shy away from after experiencing so much. That willingness to keep loving despite everything is perhaps the most revealing part of who she is. And so, the story doesn't end with regret or even with nostalgia. It ends with acceptance, the understanding that some loves are not meant to stay, but they are meant to matter. That some people enter your life not to walk beside you forever, but to change the direction of your path. For Madonna, Sean Penn was that kind of love. Not the one that lasted the longest, not the one that brought the most stability, but the one that left the deepest imprint. The one that challenged her, matched her, and ultimately helped define her in ways no one else could. And perhaps that is why, after all these years, his name still lingers not as a question, not as a regret, but as a quiet, enduring truth woven into the story of a life lived without fear. Even though her marriage didn't work out, Madonna has often reflected on love with surprising honesty. Like many people, she acknowledges that relationships can fail, sometimes because we choose the wrong partners. Yet among all her romances, she has admitted there is only one regret that still lingers the moment she decided to divorce Sean Penn. He was, in her own words, the one who made her heart beat faster than anyone else. For decades, Madonna built a reputation as someone who loved intensely but never hesitated to walk away when a relationship no longer fulfilled her. Powerful men fell for her, yet she remained in control. But when she speaks about Sean Penn, her tone softens in a way that sets him apart from everyone else. Before fame, Madonna was just a young woman from Michigan who arrived in New York City in the late 1970s with little money but enormous ambition. She slept on friends' floors, worked as a waitress and dancer, and lived through instability while chasing her dreams. During those early years, her relationships helped shape her identity. One of the most influential was with Dan Gilroy, who introduced her to music more deeply, teaching her guitar and encouraging her to write. Living together in rough conditions, they built a creative life that Madonna later described as one of her happiest periods. Still, her ambition pushed her forward, and she eventually left to pursue her own path. She later became involved with John Jellybean Benitez, a DJ who helped shape her early sound and contributed to hits that launched her career. Their relationship blended romance and collaboration, but it ended as her fame grew, marking another step in her evolution into a fiercely independent artist. Each relationship left its mark, strengthening her determination to control her own destiny. Then came the defining chapter of her romantic life. Sean Penn. They met in 1985 on the set of her Material Girl music video, and their connection was immediate and explosive. Within months, they were inseparable, drawn together by shared intensity, ambition, and rebellious energy. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage later that same year, turning them into one of the most talked-about couples of the 1980s. Madonna even dedicated her album True Blue to him, as a testament to how deeply she loved him. But their relationship was as volatile as it was passionate. Penn's jealousy and temper clashed with Madonna's public life and rising fame. Their marriage became a constant cycle of love, conflict, and reconciliation. Media attention only intensified the strain, and their differences in handling fame her. Embracing it, him resisting, it created further tension. Despite the chaos, Madonna loved him deeply, often describing him as the greatest love of her life. By 1987, the strain had become overwhelming. Madonna filed for divorce once, withdrew it, and then filed again in 1989, ending their marriage for good. There was no single breaking point, just an accumulation of pressure, arguments, and emotional exhaustion. The aftermath left her deeply shaken, and she poured her pain into her music, particularly the album Like a Prayer, which reflected her inner turmoil and search for meaning. In the years that followed, Madonna continued to experience love in different forms. She had a high-profile relationship with Warren Beatty, which brought a quieter, more controlled dynamic, but ultimately faded. Later, her secret relationship with Tupac Shakur revealed a different side of her, one shaped by cultural barriers and societal pressures that ultimately forced them apart. His later death turned that chapter into an unfinished story marked by what could have been. Motherhood brought another transformation, and she had her daughter with Carlos Leon. This period introduced stability and introspection, leading to a more spiritual and reflective phase in her life, which was expressed in her album Ray of Light. Later, her marriage to Guy Ritchie offered her the longest and most stable relationship she had experienced, lasting 8 years and bringing family life into focus. Yet even that marriage eventually ended due to fundamental differences in lifestyle and identity. In recent years, Madonna has continued to embrace love on her own terms, often appearing with younger partners like Akeem Morris. She remains unapologetic about living freely, refusing to conform to expectations about age or relationships. Despite all these chapters, however, one truth remains constant: her lingering emotional connection to Sean Penn. Even decades after their divorce, Madonna still speaks about him with warmth and honesty. She has joked about remarrying him and openly admitted that part of her still loves him. Penn, too, has described her as a good friend, suggesting that while their romance ended, their bond never fully disappeared. Looking back, Madonna has hinted at what might have been, even wondering if having a child together could have changed their story. Time has moved forward. Now neither of them can return to rewrite the past. Yet their relationship endures in memory as something rare and powerful, a love that burned intensely. Perhaps too intensely to last, but strong enough to leave a permanent mark. For Madonna, every relationship shaped who she became, but only one truly shook her to the core. And in that quiet admission lies the truth she rarely reveals. Some loves may end, but they never really leave. That lingering connection, shaped by time and distance, has transformed into something quieter, but no less meaningful. For Madonna, love is no longer about possession or permanence. It is about memory, impact, and the way certain people change you forever. As the years have passed, her perspective has softened. Where once there was intensity and conflict, there is now reflection and understanding. She no longer speaks of Sean Penn with the fire of youth, but with the calm awareness of someone who has lived through both passion and loss. In interviews, she has often hinted that what made their relationship so powerful was also what made it unsustainable. They were two alike to strong personalities unwilling to bend. Two forces constantly colliding rather than complementing each other. At the time, neither of them had the emotional distance or maturity to step back and protect what they had. Instead, they loved as if everything depended on the moment, without considering what it would take to make that love endure. It was a connection built on instinct rather than stability, and while that made it unforgettable, it also made it fragile. As Madonna moved through different chapters of her life through motherhood, reinvention, spiritual exploration, and continued global fame, she began to understand the deeper patterns in her relationships. She realized that intensity alone is not enough to sustain love. Trust, patience, and emotional balance matter just as much, if not more. Looking back, she has acknowledged that both she and Penn contributed to the breakdown of their marriage, not through a single mistake, but through a series of moments where neither chose to step back. Yet what makes their story stand out is not the ending, but the fact that neither of them has ever completely dismissed what they shared. In an industry where past relationships are often reduced to headlines and scandals, their connection has endured in a more human way. Over time, they rebuilt a friendship grounded in mutual respect, something that seemed impossible during the chaos of their marriage. Madonna has even defended Penn publicly when old accusations resurfaced, emphasizing that their relationship, while intense, should not be misunderstood or oversimplified. There is also a quiet sense of what if that lingers beneath her words. Not regret in the traditional sense, but a curiosity about how things might have unfolded under different circumstances that they had met later in life. If they had been less consumed by fame, or if they had learned sooner how to balance love with individuality, these are questions without answers. Yet they continue to echo through her reflections. Despite everything, Madonna has never allowed her past to define her future. She continues to evolve, to love, and to explore life with the same fearless energy that first brought her to New York decades ago. Her relationships, whether lasting or fleeting, have all contributed to her growth, shaping her into someone who understands both the beauty and the cost of loving deeply. And perhaps that is the real story. It's not a tale of one great love lost, but of a woman who experienced love in its many forms and learned from each one. Still, among all those experiences, one remains untouched by time. God. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real in a way that few things are. In the end, Madonna does not try to return to the past or rewrite it. She carries it with her, not as a burden, but as a reminder of who she was and how far she has come. And when she speaks of Sean Penn, it is not with longing for what once was, but with gratitude for what it meant. Some love stories are not meant to last forever. They are meant to shape you, to challenge you, and to stay with you long after they are gone. That understanding has given Madonna a kind of emotional clarity she didn't have in her younger years. Where she once chased intensity, she now recognizes the quiet strength of acceptance. Love for her is no longer about proving something, winning, or holding on at all costs. It is about feeling, learning, and letting go when necessary. And yet, even with that wisdom, some emotions remain untouched by time, existing in a space beyond logic or resolution. When she reflects on Sean Penn, it is clear that what they shared was not just another chapter, it was a turning point. He was the mirror that reflected her own fire back at her, the one person who could match her intensity in a way that both thrilled and unsettled her.